Hello everyone, this is Duc Tran, founder of Developer Inspirers, and welcome back to Daily Challenge. Now in this challenge, I challenge you to try out the introduction to core graphics, and this is how the app will look like after this daily challenge. In the last video, we have designed our two buttons here. So now in this video, we will design this graphics view that whenever we click into the plus or the minus button, this view will update it. Like when I click into this, and we will increase the counter, or we will decrease the counter. And all of these drawings we are drawing those by code, by core graphics. We don't use any images, okay? So that's our challenge today. We will draw this one in this challenge and maybe in the next, okay? So now I will open up my starter project, which is the previous project. If you haven't started the previous project yet, please check it out because you will need that before continue to this. Alright, so now let's check out our main.storyboard to see what's going on here. And the nice thing about this is the main.storyboard is when we use, if you remember, the designable button view, we have this class to be designable, and this is inspectable with these two variables. So in this main.storyboard, we can inspect these properties, these attributes, and we can change the colors. So that's a new feature in Xcode, right? So now when I want to have this view, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I will create a custom class for this view, and so I will new file, and this is Cocoa Touch, and the class I will name this counter view because we are counting counter view, and it is a subclass of UI view. Okay, so I will click next, and I will just place it normally like that and create. So as usually, I like to organize my code like this. So I will select the designable view and the counter view, and those are our views. And also you can argue that the main.storyboard is also the view, so let's place it in that folder, the group, the app.delegate, leave it there. This is the controller, so controllers, okay. Alright, so let's jump right into the counter view and see what we can do with this. Okay, I will uncomment this one because later on we will have to write code to draw this graphic views right here, right? So now let's say we want to count something. So I will declare a variable. This is a public variable right here, and I will say number of, let's say it's items, okay, and it is 8. So this is number items, so the maximum one could be 8. So we will create 8 items like that, okay, and the minimum one is 0, of course. So, and for later on, we will need something called a pi, which is just the number pi, right? If you still remember high school or middle school math. So pi, which is a CG float, and I want it to be CG float and m_pi. Okay, so we have number of items and we have pi. Now, if you remember in the designable button view, we have this class to be designable, so that we can change some attributes with the storyboard. So let's do the same with this one, just to practice it. Okay. So we have IB designable, okay, D designable, right? And inside here, I will have some inspectable variables. Let's say I want to have a counter, okay, which is the number of the counting that I will update with this one. Whenever I click into that, I will update the counter. I want to have an outline color. This is the outline color, this darker blue. It's not blue. I don't know the name of this, but it's the color of the sky. Okay, and then when I decrease it, and we have the counter color, which is this graphical color of this kind of like the circle. Okay, so I will start to create some this at ib inspectable var counter, which is an int, and it is 5. And one thing to notice is that if you want to have an inspectable, you have to explicitly declare the type of this. Okay, at ib inspectable var, and we have an outline color, which is UI color. And now let's just by default we have it to be the blue color, UI color dot blue color. And another one, ib inspectable and var counter color, which is also a UI color. And for this one, let's say it is UI color dot orange color. Okay, so not very good colors, but it is just the default color, and we can change it in the attribute inspector later on. Okay, so now we have these. Let's actually create a view, a UI generic UI view on this, so that we can see it into the main.storyboard. Okay, so now I will actually move all these down, because as you see that in here we have these two buttons down below. Okay, so I will let's clear constraint for all of these, because it's very easy to change these constraints. So move it down like that, maybe something like this. Okay, like that. So now I will have a view, a generic UI view. So I will scroll down below here, and we have a view like that. Okay, so for this view, let's say I want to inspect the size inspector. The X position, I know it is 185. The Y is 70. The width is 230, and the height is also 230. Okay, so now it is well centered. Now let's create some auto layout for this. I will control drag like that to you see that if you control drag diagonally like this, you will have the width and the height. So if normally if you do horizontally like that, you have the height. If you have like this, then you will have the X and the Y. Okay, so now I want this to be center horizontally and center vertically like that. Good. And we can do the same for this, width and height, horizontal vertically, and for the same for this, width and height, horizontal vertically like that. Good. So now we can preview this by clicking into this view controller, go to that and preview. Yeah, very cool, huh? Now let's say we have 5.5. It's great. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is don't forget to assign this view, generic view that we just create, with a custom class, and our custom class is counter view. Okay, so I go to the identity inspector and just do that. Okay, so now let's write some drawing code, will we? So let's go back to counter view, and in the drawRect method, I will override this method, and by default Xcode very nicely write it for us. That's why we uncommented it right? So now in this, the first thing I want to do is I want to define the center of the view where we will rotate this arc. So this is an arc, and let's say if you remember that, let's say if you are in high school or middle school, you want to draw a circle, right? And you will use a compass. So you will have a center point. You will open the arm of that compass, and then you will draw it around this center point. So I would want to have a center point. Let's say let center equals CG point, and this is X. The X is bound.width over 2. The width over 2 The y is bounds dot height over 2. Okay, so some simple math. Now, right now in the demo, I will not comment, but in the complete project code, I will comment for you. Okay, so if you want to refer back to see some detailed comment code, check out the complete project. Okay, so now I want to have a radius. I will do let radius, which is a CG float, and we will find the maximum between the bounds.width and the bounds.height. In this case, it is both, right? It is either one because the bounds.width and the bounds.height is equal because it is a square, but just in case, right? So we'll have max bounds.width and bounds.height like that. So we have the center and the radius. Now I want to have an arc width. This is the width of the arc, right? So the arc width, let's arc width, which is also a CG float, okay? And maybe 76. Now, if you remember that, if you think that this is a circle, so if we want to start to draw from this center point, so we will have to a starting point, which is this one, right? If you see on the video, I think that there will be a point like that, a circle, and I will mark it like this, right? And then we will start draw from this, and we draw like that, and then we will end there. So we'll have a starting point and an end point, right? But with core graphics, they are very cool feature with UI Bezier path. You still remember UI Bezier path, and it has a method that we'll later on use. And now we don't have to specify a starting point, an ending point, but we will need to start to declare a start angle and an end angle. Okay, so things came a little bit complex here, but so this is the center point, and now we want to have a starting angle. Okay, and we will use pi, and pi with the angle it is radian. Okay, so I will have let's start angle is a CG float, and now this is, I want it to be 3 pi over 4. Okay, so if you want to have a look at this, this is actually the unit circle. Okay, so I will have a command check down unit circle. So if you Google unit circle, you will see a radian circle, a circle with radian degree. Right? So now I have 3 times pi over 4. And where is pi? Pi is what we declare above here. Okay. So now let's say I have a let end angle. And for this let end angle, I will have CG float. And this is pi over 4. Okay, very cool. Now, I refer to a method that of UI Bezier path that will use all of these to draw this arc. So let's use that. I will have a var path, and it is a UI Bezier path. And this UI Bezier path will use the method arc center, and it will take the arc center, which is this center. We will have a radius, which is the radius taken from this radius of the bigger circle and the arc width. We'll have a start angle, we'll have an end angle, and whether we want to draw clockwise or not, of course that, right? So we have all the things we need now. Now, the center is center. The radius is not the radius, but the let's refer back to this. So we have this, let's say this is the midpoint, the center, right? So from this to this is the radius. From this to this is the arc width. So what we want to do with this radius is radius over 2 minus arc width over 2. Okay, now the start angle is the start angle and the end angle is end angle, and we want to draw clockwise, so this is true. Okay, so we have the path. All we need to do now is we will stroke it or we will fill it. So let's say I want to stroke it, sorry. So path dot line width, so I want to line width this with the arc width equals arc width. Okay, so if you see, this is actually the path, right? And now this arc width is this whole thing. So this blue, let's say this is the color blue, and the arc width, when we do the arc width and when we stroke it, it will create this arc like that. Okay, so the secret is not we draw the whole thing like that. We stroke this Bezier path with this line, this width of the line. So we have arc width like that. Okay, now so we will have counter color dot stroke, I'm sorry, set stroke, and then we will do path dot stroke. Okay, so now we can run this, but let's check back to main.storyboard because we do this as designable class, so we can see that this one will be updated. There we go. So this is the color, and to test this, let's attribute inspector and the outline color. We can do the counter color like that. Okay, so this is the code for this color, which is 55ACEE. Okay, you can use the color you like this one. So this is 57DAE5. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to let's say I want to have this line, okay, this stroke thing. So let's do that. But first, before I do this, let's say I want to get these code into a new function, a new method, so that later on I can refer to this, because the code that we will draw this, the other the kind of like the outline for this is very similar. So I will factor it out like that. Okay, so now I will have a fun. This is a, let's say I want to private fun draw arc. Okay, because we are drawing some arc. Center CG point. Remember that center is CG point. We have radius, which is CG float. We have arc width, CG float. We have start angle, which is CG float also, and end angle CG float. Okay, and now in here I will just paste it like that, which is the code that we just wrote. And here I will call this draw arc, center, radius, arc width, start angle, and end angle. Okay, all right, so let's jump to the fun part, which is we will draw the outline. Now I said to you that the outline code is very much familiar, very much like this one, so I will copy this, right? I will copy this, and instead of draw arc, I will draw outline, just like that. Okay, and inside here, let's say I want, and yeah, inside here I will do some drawing code, so I will delete everything like that. Okay, now the first thing I want to do is I want to calculate the difference between two angles and to ensure that those are positive. Well, what is that angle? Well, the angle is the start angle and the end angle. Okay, so I will do let angle difference, which is CG float. CG float equals 2 times pi minus start angle plus end angle. Okay, so this is the angle difference. Now I want to define the arc length per per item. Let arc length per item. Okay, so it is this length divided by how many parts. So this is one part and this is another one, so we need that arc length. Okay, now we don't have to do any integral here. Okay, so you remember calculus. So now the arc length per path is angle difference divided by CG float of number of items. Okay, now next I want to multiply out by the number of actual items that we increase or decrease, which is this counter, if you remember. Okay, so we have a counter, so I will multiply out that, so that when I can draw this, okay, to update with the updated counter. So I go to let outline in angle, which is the arc length per items times CG float counter plus start angle. Okay, and then now let's have an outline path with UI Bezier path. Var outline path equals UI Bezier path, and we have the arc center, which is center, the radius, which is bound.width over 2 minus 2.5, and the start angle is start angle, the end angle is end angle, and clockwise, well, we want to clockwise, so true. Now let's say I want to shrunk it and I want to have the line width, and then okay, so outline path dot set struct, sorry, outline color dot set struct, outline path dot line width equals 5.0, and outline path dot struct. Okay, all right, so now don't forget to call this. Draw outline, center, radius, arc width, start angle, and end angle. If you don't like to have two different methods like this, you can put everything in here into one draw rect method. But I just personal preference. So we'll go back to main.storyboard and we can see this. All right. So now our where is it? The counter view. The counter now is 5 and the number of items is 8. Okay, so this is the line so far. So what do we miss? Well, we miss we miss the inner of this arc, right? So now I will do the inner of this arc like this. While inside here, between the line of 52, which is outline path, and the set struct, I will do something like outline path dot add arc with center, and I have to specify the center. The radius is bound dot width over 2 minus arc width, and this time is plus 2.5. Okay, and then we have the outline end angle, and then we have the end angle here is the start angle. Okay, because we are drawing the inner arc, so this is anti-clockwise or not clockwise. Okay, I don't know if this is a word, but right. So next thing we want to do is outline path dot close path. So we have to close the path. Now let's get back to main.storyboard and see what's happened. It's so we getting there. Okay, so it's there's something wrong with this because it's not drawing the outline of this. So there must be some number we said wrong. Alright, it's 24 minutes already, so let's stop here and we'll complete this app and fix the bug in the next part 3 of the introduction to core graphics. So It's been very fun so far. I hope that you enjoy this video tutorial. If you want more free tutorials, please go to developerinspireds.io and subscribe to our newsletter list. Until next time, I'll see you in part 3 of Core Location.